And of course, the $100 investment, so it wasn't nothing, but $100 we turned into $11,000.
Hi there, Salena Kulkarni here with another episode of the Freedom Warrior podcast. On today's episode, I'm super excited to share an interview I did with a good friend of mine, Brent Williams. Brent runs the amazing organisation called Empower You, which hosts a 2-day personal development and life skills program designed for teenagers to give them the tools and strategies they need to reach their full potential. Now, what I really loved about the interview today is it absolutely showcases what an amazing storyteller Brent is. He's very clear about how he measures success and what his highest priorities are when it comes to finances and wealth. He also shares how he goes about spinning many plates on the journey to creating financial freedom. Now on to the show. Brent Williams, so awesome to have you on the show. Thank you so much for making the time. I know what a busy guy you are.
Well, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
So, we've known each other a long time, and what I really thought would be interesting today would be to maybe kind of peel back the onion a little further and ask you some questions that kind of really talk to who you are. So, obviously Freedom Warrior is all about helping people understand some of the tools and tactics and strategies that people use to, develop financial freedom. But above all else, I think what people find really useful is hearing about, the stories, real stories of how different people invest and their own definitions of success. So I think where I'd love to start with you, Brent, is, you share a lot of yourself in the programs that you run, and obviously have a reasonably strong emphasis on wealth and money. If you think back to your childhood and the way that money showed up in your family, what are some of the lessons that have served you on this journey? I know you share a little bit about your dad, but I'd love to really open that up a bit more.
Yeah. So my relationship to money started from a young age. And I guess what I mean by that is I was just very mindful of money as a kid. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I had real entrepreneurial tendencies. I think you could argue my first business I had was what would it have been? I would have been 8 years old. So that was put me in year two, primary school. And I would ride up to the shops. It was a shop called Golo. It's like the modern version of the reject shop. And they would sell boxes of Robocop cards. They must have got them on a clearance somehow, pallet of them. And there was a box of Robocop cards for $10. And each box had 30 packets with some movie cards in there and a stick of gum. And so I'd buy this box for $10. Then I'd ride it home, and then I'd go to school on the Monday, and then I'd sell each pack for $1 each. And there were 30 packs in a box. So for my $10 investment, I'd make $20 profit. And that was a very lucrative business for me for about 3 months until the principal caught wind of my little endeavor. I got in trouble. But suffice to say, it certainly gave me a taste of not just having a job where I'd swap time for money, but being smart. And so that was my first little business. I then had another one. I think with my paper run, I started to get a few other people doing the paper run as well, and I took a commission. That was when I was about 13. And then I had a movie pirating business when I was 15. It's not illegal, but nevertheless, I did it. I'd buy these pirated movies that were shot in the cinemas on a Steadicam from this guy that worked at a arcade in Burwood in Sydney, where I lived. Then I dubbed the tapes and then sell them at school. But I would say my biggest influence in terms of money was my father. And I know you referenced him earlier, and I think it's important to share what that was all about, because it was probably the biggest reference for me as a young person to want to build wealth in my life. And so we're a middle-class family. My mum and dad were amazing parents. I had a younger brother named Andrew, 3 years younger than me, and we'd always go on lovely holidays every year. We were middle of the road, but my parents would always, go the extra mile for these family trips. So I share that with you because it's not that I ever went wanting. However, my father would always complain about how much things cost. Look at the bill. Isn't this outrageous? And it was a constant. And I'm sure anyone watching this would probably have someone in their life that has a somewhat scarcity mentality when it comes to money. And I suppose it was in my later teenage years that I had a bit of a realization that, you know, I thought to myself, I wonder if my dad added up the many, you know, minutes, hours, weeks, and months that he has, maybe even years, that he has spent worrying about money. And if you could eliminate that, how much freer you would be. And so he gave me massive impetus to make sure that money was not this big obstacle in my life, that money wasn't this thing that consumed me, that, you know, I didn't want it to stop me from living life on my terms. So that was really the driving force for me to build wealth. It was that, and coupled with a very unique dream of being a filmmaker. I knew that that would be a starving artist profession, and I wanted to pursue it vigorously, but didn't want money to be an obstacle in the way of it. So I felt that by getting a financial education, I could leverage my time, which is our most valuable commodity, and then invested in the things that I wanted to do. So it was really, money was really just a byproduct of me being able to live life on my terms, which I was very, very driven to do.
Such a great answer. I love that. I've heard the story of your father a couple of times, but that's a unique way of sharing. So I love that. I just want to kind of go down a bit of a rabbit hole on a couple of things you said, but one of them was, you know, you've obviously had entrepreneurial spirit since a very young age, and you know that's a common thread amongst business owners. But you know, if you think about making money, does it seem like, you know, if on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is, you know, it's super easy and 10 is really hard, you know, where do you sit on that spectrum? Because obviously in some ways you're a real natural, but in the, you know, for many people that doesn't come easily. Where do you sit on that?
Geez, if 1 was easy and 10 was hard,
Yeah.
I'd be leaning closer to the 10 than the 1. I don't know what number I would say, but I'd say it'd probably be around the 7 or 8. But I think there's an asterisk to that comment, and that is this, is that, you know, while I haven't on a personal level achieved the financial goals that I probably had when I was 18, almost 20 years ago, well, 21 years ago now, I'm 39, what I have done is leverage my time greatly. So when I look at my lifestyle, I don't know many people that have a better lifestyle than I do. So I guess my metrics for success have changed over time, and having a family and children, you know, I think my personal goals have changed. But what I will say in terms of building wealth, you know, it's such a big part of the line of 1 to 10, I think is determined on the vehicle you choose, particularly business. I've certainly learned that. I don't think that money is necessarily the best reflection of someone's personal ability to execute an idea. Sometimes it's just the niche that you've chosen can be more financially rewarding than others. And I reflect very clearly on my business, which is youth, which is a more difficult market to kind of achieve some of the results that I know some of my peers in the adult space are achieving.
Yeah, I love that answer. You know, if we were to kind of give people a snapshot of what you mean when you say, you know, you have one of the best lifestyles out there, what does that look like?
I don't answer to anybody. I work when I want to. If I want to have days off, I have days off. If I want to have weeks off, I have weeks off. Where I can, I nap every day.
Love it.
I try to clock off probably by 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock at the latest every day. Like this right now is a stretch for me. Late in the afternoon, it's my love for you, Salena.
Thank you.
You know, it's been always, you know, like I've just started up every 2 weeks. I have Monday off and I go play golf with some friends, you know, so it's that sense of freedom and flexibility that's so exciting. Like, are there times where I work way harder than anybody else? Of course, but it's because I choose to. And I think that choice is the most exciting thing for me, my lifestyle. And look, you know, I'm with the kids in the morning. I'm with the kids at night. I'm with the kids on weekends, apart from when I run events. So I'm as present at that as I know.
Yeah, I love that. I think that kind of leads me to my next question. You know, I've known you for many years now, and one of my observations of you is that there is a high degree of congruence between what you say and how you live. I'm really curious about that. Do you think that's an inherent quality that you have? And, you know, maybe how does that show up in the area of money and wealth for you?
Yeah, thank you for that compliment. That's certainly how I took it.
Absolutely.
You know, I certainly am very mindful of living what I preach, because I've seen so few people do that. And I know that in my industry, that has been a bit of a black spot on it, that, you know, people go, oh, well, you know, these people claim to be this, that, and the other, having work-life balance and, you know, contributors. But then when you really pull behind the curtain, they're not. So I remember when I got into this space and saw so many people that I really admired were not who they were, it was a real personal thing for me to go, well, I never want to be that, because it's just so phony. It's just, and then, you know, what are you selling? I wanted to be, it was very important for me to protect the integrity of the program that I ran, that I was living, breathing proof of everything that I taught, and that everything I taught I could validate through my own personal life. And so I think that's what really drove me. In terms of wealth, I would say that's probably my biggest challenge, is I don't feel that my financial results have married up to my contributions and efforts to the world. I know that the Think and Grow Rich will say, you know, what you sow, you will reap. And I understand that to a certain degree. And I think that's probably my only frustration. But, you know, truth be told, Salena, I think the hardest thing is, you know, they always say your network reflects your net worth. And I truly believe that in many respects. But I think that the challenge with that is sometimes you measure yourself up to people that it's unrealistic to measure up to, if that makes sense.
Totally.
You know, and I think that's been hard for me. If I look at all of my high school friends and where they are now, I'm probably the most successful out of my whole year group, maybe apart from one or two others. But then I measure myself up to my peers from a financial dollar perspective, and it's a very different story. So I think there's a danger in that. But at the same time, those people certainly lift me to a high standard.
Yeah, I love that. I think one of the things that I've almost kind of noticed by, you know, sideways glances, that you have definitely taken a very unconventional approach to wealth creation. You know, I've heard you speak about, you know, silver and gold and, you know, trading cards and all sorts of things. And to my knowledge, you still do those things. You know, why have you taken a non-conventional approach to making money? And to some degree, you know, obviously your business is one of your biggest investments, but it's almost as if you're spinning quite a few plates at once and really being very creative. How has that come about?
A number of different reasons. I would say primarily, and I actually did a webinar not too long ago called From Passion to Profit. And it really was born out of, as you mentioned, my card trading. I had a passion for basketball cards as a teenager when Michael Jordan exploded onto the international stage and became a global superstar. And through my 7-year-old son, Caden, who's taken up basketball, I kind of reconnect with that passion, and with a just relatively disposable income and eBay, I was able to reconnect with my kind of childhood hobbies, and went really hardcore in it. And so because I am an entrepreneur and an investor, so there was the collector in me that wanted to buy these cards, but then there was the investor in me saying, well, how can I make money off it? And so now I'm selling about $1,000 a week in cards. I've averaged that the last 6 weeks, and it's become quite a little business. I've got a little eBay store, about $50,000 in stock. But coming back to answer your question, you know, I've never wanted to just make money for making money sake. I've always wanted to do it with things or vehicles that I enjoy and understand. So property was attractive to me because in Australia, it seems to be the #1 investment vehicle because of land mass and population growth. So that was a logical decision. And of course, understanding the power of leverage. I think when people truly understand the power of leverage, it's very hard to compete with property where $1 can control 10 versus $1 controlling $1. And so that leverage really appealed to me. But in terms of gold and silver and cards and things like that. I've always just looked at, well, if there's something that I'm really enjoying, is there a way I can make money out of it? And I suppose they're questions I've always asked and said, how can I get the wholesale price? So like, for example, with the cards, really quickly, I was buying these cards at a rate of knots in Australia because I have an Australian eBay account. But then I realized after doing some more research, the cards were far more cheaper and a much bigger pool in the US, but the freight was so expensive. So then I found a company in the US that was doing a service where you could use them as an address, send the card to them. So you essentially have an eBay address in America, and then they would collate them all and then send them to you in one go. And that's how I've been flipping cards, is I've been buying them at, you know, $1 and then selling them here for $2. And then just, you know, understanding the details of that. But it's because I enjoy it that I've looked to make money from it. So in terms of the gold and silver, again, that was just, you know, I like to, you mentioned spinning plates, and that can be a blessing and a curse. You know, in my early career where I was business partners with Dale Beaumont, we were spinning lots of plates and doing lots of things because I was kind of like Jim Carrey in the movie Yes Man. You know, a lot of opportunities came my way because I was very young, ambitious, and because I was on stage. You know, a lot of people come to me with, you know, network marketing opportunities, the latest gadget, and wanting me to get involved. So I very much had the hunger to go, I'll try this, I'll try that. You know, I'm an eternal optimist. It's why I'm a motivational speaker, I suppose. And so the gold and silver was me just stumbling across some information about how money works, inflation, and the idea that gold and silver would kind of be a hedge against inflation. And truth be told, quite recently, whenever anyone sees this podcast in terms of dates, gold and silver is doing really well. So it's certainly been a successful investment. But the other point I'll make, and I know I give long answers, is I like to spread my risk as well. So I like that I've got, for example, you know, about 50 grand stored in cards and posters, you know, that I'm now starting to sell. You know, I've got a whole bunch of cash. I've got gold and silver. It gives me a sense of security. And I think that's the most important thing. And I guess if I had to summarize the whole question into one point, is that the variety and spread gives me a level of comfort. And ultimately for me, that is my number one goal with building wealth, to give me that level of comfort and security. It's not about Ferraris and big houses and traveling. It's not about that at all. It's just comfort and security. And I think that's probably the biggest motivation for doing that.
Yeah, I'm loving your answers. That was a fabulous response. I wondered if you might share with our listeners the very creative pursuit. One of the things that you talk about, and I've heard you talk about, is it's possible to make money from nothing. And there's a story that I've heard you share before, and I'd love it if you could share, of really that edifies and kind of brings to light this whole thing. It is possible to make money from nothing. If you could share that story, I would love that.
Okay. Now, do you want the short version or the accurate version?
Give me the accurate version.
Okay. So we're talking about Sydney Harbour, right? Is that what we're talking about? Okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I as you know, I ran a publicity company for about 5 or 6 years in the early 2000s called Kapow Media. And the reason that came about was that when I started up Empower You, I'd written a book, The Law to Your Feet, mainly as an entry into the media. And, you know, I did Sunrise and Today's Show and a lot of newspapers and magazines, but I learned very quickly that the media could be a great ally or absolutely destroy you. And I had a few questionable articles written that certainly sped up my education around publicity and the media. And so, because I got very good at doing it for myself, we set up this company. So I understood the power of media, understood the nature of writing a press release and how to find an angle to get yourself, on magazines, newspapers, and radio. In starting up that business, I actually bought a publicity course from the US from a man named Paul Hartunian. Now, Paul Hartunian, his claim to fame in the US is he is America's #1 relationship coach. And he would give himself that title because anytime anyone would question him, he'd say, well, get somebody else on there that can say that they're more than me and we'll have a debate about it. And that never happened. So I found that was an interesting way of him positioning himself. But Paul Hartunian did something amazing. He was watching the Today Show in America in the morning, and they were doing a story of the Brooklyn Bridge. Okay, and there's the main bridge that cars go over, but there's the side bridge. It's the walkway for people to walk back and forth across the bridge. And this story was about how they were actually renovating or rebuilding this walkway bridge. And in the background, they had this ute pulled up with a whole pile of wood that was from the bridge that they were kind of tearing down to replace. And he noted the phone number on the side of this little ute, and he called up the number and he said, look, I was just watching the Today Show this morning, and I saw that there's this reconstruction of the Brooklyn Bridge. What are you doing with that wood that I saw in the shot? And the man was a bit confused. It's old wood, we're throwing it out. He said, can I buy it off you? He said, buy it off me? Well, sure, $500, absolutely. So he picked up all this wood. Then what he did was he got all of the wood and he got it cut into tiny little squares like this, really thin. And he got all of them stuck on a sheet of paper that was an official certificate saying this is an official part of the Brooklyn Bridge. And he sold them for $20 each and made $7 million.
Wow.
So that was the seed that was planted when I heard about that story. Now, my mother collects, or doesn't anymore, but she used to collect spoons. I don't know if you've ever seen that before. People are friends, they've got all this silver spoon collection. It's very, very old fashioned, but nevertheless, I thought, well, people collect spoons. And then I thought, well, I wonder if I could sell something that cost me little money, that if I did a publicity stunt would kind of launch the business. And I thought, well, if people collect spoons, a lot of people come to Australia, when they get to the airport and they want to fly home, they think, oh, I haven't gotten any kind of what's the word? Memorabilia, something like that from Australia. So what do they think? They think didgeridoo. They might think boomerang, but those are either big items or they're wood, which may not go through customs in their country. And so I thought, what if I had a vending machine at the airport that for $14.95, I could sell a little jar, a little bottle of Sydney Harbour water and say, this is official harbour water from Sydney Harbour. And I'd sell it for $14.95. And so then I started a journey to find out, do I have the rights to take that water out and can I say it? And the answer was yes, because no one wanted to take ownership of the water. There was ownership rights for the top of the water, so they could charge for boats and mooring. There was ownership rights for the bottom of the water, so they could lay cables and tunnels, but no one wanted responsibility for the water itself, because if there was a spill, they'd be liable. So that meant that I could pump millions and millions of gallons of water out and that would be fine. So how I made money out of nothing was a publicity stunt. So what I did was I wrote a press release that said, man sells Sydney Harbour on eBay. And what I did was I went down to the harbour, under the harbour bridge, there's a little walkway. I got a bucket. I scooped up a bucket full of water. I went to an aquarium builder and I said, can you build me a little aquarium? How much will it cost? He said, $40. I said, I'll give you $50 if you do a good job. He said, okay. So he builds me this little aquarium. I then go to Darling Harbour and I spend another $50. So it's a total $100 investment so far. $50 on a paperweight. And his paperweight is a glass paperweight. It's really nice. And it's etched into it Sydney Harbour. And it has the Harbour Bridge, the Opera House, the tower, and the skyline. So I go back to this aquarium builder. He's finished. I said, I need you to glue this paperweight into the middle of the aquarium. Then I want you to fill it up with this water. He said, tap water. I said, no, it has to be this water from this bucket. He said, why? I said, it has to be this water. So he fills it up. And to his credit, he said, we probably should treat it in case there's bacteria. I didn't even think about that. So we did that. Then we sealed it. So it's a $100 investment. So then I put it up on eBay for a 10-day auction, starting at 1 cent. Goes to the highest bidder. I then on day 2, so I got 10 days to promote this thing. It's not enough to just put it up there. No one's going to pay anything for that. They're going to pay for the story. I knew this. It wasn't the jar. It was the story behind the jar. And so I then, after a day, I went up like 2 cents, 10 cents, 20 cents, 50 cents. And then I went with some of my team at 2 a.m. on a Monday morning. And we took boxes of chalk and we went to every major street corner in Sydney CBD and wrote on the floor, Sydney Harbour for sale, ebay.com. And of course, I knew that morning at rush hour, there'd be hundreds of thousands of people going to their offices, and they'd wait at the lights and look at the floor and go, what is this? So of course that morning we had 4,000 hits, and it went to $1, $5, $10, $20, and it started to get traction. Then the big thing was I wrote a press release that said, man sells Sydney Harbour on eBay. Now I did this with a friend of mine. We were, you know, we're doing this thing and blah, 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 you know, we're selling this item. And I then got a call from Channel 10 News. Now, it's 60 seconds long. Would you like me to play the news clip right now? Because it'll take me all of 30 seconds to play it through my screen.
Go for it.
Right, okay. Well, let's, let me just, it'll be very quick because I know it's just, let me go.
People who are watching this will love it.
Yeah. Sydney Harbour.
This is seriously the 12-inch version I've never heard.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I think because most people don't know where's the idea come from. And that was, okay, here we go. All right. So let me share my screen and share computer sound. Here we go. Okay.
It's a cheeky plan, but it's a darn good one. Two Sydney blokes are set to make a mozza in a unique bottom of the harbour scheme.
Would you buy a jar of used Sydney Harbour water from these two men? Well, that's what Brent Williams and Aaron Artery are asking.
We're selling this little item here, which is based about 600 mils of seawater that we've out of the harbour. We've put in a purpose-built fish tank and goes the highest bidder.
The pair, who met at a personal development seminar, are trying to cash up to publish children's books they've written. So they thought they'd better come up with a bottler of an idea.
Aaron told his boss about this idea early on, and he said, you've got more chance of selling a fart in a jar than a glass of Sydney Harbour water. So Aaron looked it up. 73 people around the world are selling a fart in a jar.
So far, bidding is at more than $1,000 US. Not bad considering the whole shebang cost them just over $100. What right have you got to sell off Sydney Harbour?
I live in Sydney, just like everyone else, so we're just the first to do it.
But wait, there's more. If the guys don't make all the money they need selling off their little piece of Sydney Harbour, they've got their eye on some other Australian icons.
Maybe a bit of the Opera House if we can get our hands on it.
Bidding ends Thursday morning. Angela Bishop, 10 News.
So, yeah, that was Channel 10 News. Yeah, 6 p.m. And off the back of that, I was on Colin Jackie-O the next morning talking about selling his undies online. And then there was a bunch of newspapers and magazines. And, of course, the $100 investment. So it wasn't nothing, but $100 we turned into $11,000.
Wow.
Yeah. And the outcome is great, but I think the story is far more powerful than the dollar result that I got, because it just shows you, you know, it's, if money is an idea, and if you can think outside the box, be creative and a bit ingenuity, then, you know, the sky's really the limit.
I love that story. I love it. Look, I think you're definitely someone who edifies the idea that, you know, making money can happen in lots of different ways, no question. But let me ask you a trickier question, which is, you know, if you were to wake up tomorrow and everything financially around you was gone and you had to start over, what would you do first?
So when we say start over, would I be able to start up my business again? Or would I have to start from scratch?
You'd have to start from ground zero. If you had to start from ground zero, what would you do?
With my skill set?
Yep.
I'd have a big brainstorm about what business I'd want to start up, but I'd probably just throw myself into a job. I'd throw myself into a sales job, the highest paying commission sales job I could get, because I know I could sell anything. So that would most likely be in real estate, or maybe big ticket items like selling jets. I know somebody who sells jets. And so I'd chase down the highest commission sales job, commission only, back myself to the hilt, no base, let's go. That's what I do.
That is a fantastic answer. How is it that you've developed those skills to sell? Like, how do you think that's come about?
A lot of different things, you know, obviously primarily speaking on stage and most importantly, speaking to an audience that doesn't want to be there. That is the biggest difference between the work that I do and most of my peers in the personal development industry is most people, like Tony Robbins, for instance, is the easiest person to reference here. People decide to go along. So there's a level of buy-in and commitment already. Whereas my audience are teenagers. I've got one coming up this weekend, and we've just had a few more teenagers pull out because they don't want to do it. But we're going to have plenty that are going to be there that don't want to do it, and their parents are making them go. So I had to very quickly, from a young age, we're talking at 19, I was on stage running these programs. I had to not only teach them what I wanted to teach them, but I had to sell them on the value of the idea. So I think it was just by sheer force that I had to develop these skills. And by having to do it at such high volume, like at my peak, I was running a seminar every week on stage, sometimes twice a week. And so that level of miles on stage has just sped up my education around sales and framing, pre-framing, managing expectations, reframing, positioning, all of those things, and listening to lots of sales courses and NLP and timeline therapy and a lot of the strategies around language and embedded commands. And I know we're kind of going down the rabbit hole as you mentioned earlier.
I love that. No, that's yeah. Look,
So,
sales is definitely an underrated skill in life for sure. No, I love that. That's terrific. I'm very conscious of time here, Brent, but I do have one last question for you, which is, you and I are both passionate about financial education for teenagers because, we see the product of people who don't have that, really floundering in adulthood. In your opinion, if you're talking to a younger audience, for example, where do you see the greatest opportunities for those people who want to create wealth over the next decade?
well, there's never been a better time. There's never been a better time. I mean, when I started this journey, that was in the early 2000s. I think my first seminar I attended that exposed me to good debt versus bad debt, SWOT analysis, the cash flow quadrant, Robert Kiyosaki. That was 2001. And the internet was quite primitive then. And you had to really seek out and pay for any kind of education you wanted. Now we all have it here. The touch of a button, we can answer any question we want anytime. So I think for any young person, there's never been a better time because the resources at your fingertips are greater than ever before. There's far less excuses for ignorance. And there's so many more ways to launch a product that you don't need to carry the overheads of an office or a building or even a business card anymore. Everything's virtual and online. So it's cheaper, faster, and easier than ever before to set up a business. The challenge with that, if I may, I'm going to draw. The challenge with that is this. Bear with me. I'm drawing 3 circles. And I know you've heard me say this story before. The journey of a caterpillar. Now, a caterpillar's dream is to become a butterfly, right? Now, the dream, in order to fulfill this dream, we call this the prize here. In order for this caterpillar to become a butterfly, it doesn't make the decision to do it. It has to go through something. This something we call the struggle. And the struggle for a caterpillar is to go through this metamorphosis where they go into this cocoon and their body changes, and a lot of the, sorry for the viewers at home, I'm not more technical, but the liquid inside them gets squeezed out of their body and into these wings. And then what happens is these wings, to break out of this cocoon, they have to push like this. They flap their wings to push and break the cocoon. Now, the important thing here is it's through that struggle, it's through that resistance of this cocoon being hard to break out of, that the butterfly builds the muscles in the wings that once they're free, they can fly freely. And therefore, earn is the key word there, earn the prize. Dream, struggle, prize. If you were to cut a cocoon prematurely to try and help that butterfly and free it, you'd actually sabotage it because it won't have enough muscles to take off. And so the counter argument to my very positive point about there's never been a better time for a young person to start up a business is you could argue because there's not as great a struggle anymore, people all trying to shortcut, find easier ways, and they don't build their emotional muscle to withstand the long haul. And I reflect on that with Empower You. Empower You, when we started off, was so difficult because we didn't have Facebook. We didn't have very easy mediums to communicate to our market, which is mums. Now it's so much easier. And had I been able to start the game now with that same energy and vigor and commitment, it would be very different. But the counter argument would be, because it's easy, people get lazy. Because it's just there, people don't take it up. If there's a webinar online that's free, people think, well, maybe it's not worth anything because it costs nothing. Yet, just because it's free doesn't diminish its value, but it's just people's perception. So the challenge for young people is it's so easy. But if you are smart enough and have enough hunger and understand the game, there's never been a better time to start a business. There's never been a better time to build wealth, because there's so many ways to do it, more than ever, to do it fast, to do it much more effortless, to do it more leveraged. It's an exciting time, but it's whether young people have the eyes to see it. And I'd like to think my mission in Empower You is to give people the eyes to see the opportunity for what it is.
Absolutely love that response. Brent Williams, you are and still remain one of my favourite people. You are one of the world's best storytellers, and I so appreciate you making time after 2 p.m. to record this podcast. So thanks very much.
You're most welcome. And the sentiment's the same. Thank you, Salena.
Thanks for listening to the Freedom Warrior podcast. First of all, if you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to subscribe to avoid missing out on future episodes. If you're interested in fast tracking towards being financially free, go to freedomwarrior.com.au, get in touch, and look forward to catching up with you next time. Take care.